Alright, as you may recall from part 1 of the Basilisk build, I applied this coat of Xandri Dusk and I used a fluffy makeup brush. So I'm going to continue doing that for the camouflage. Now I'm going to kind of sort of maybe roughly follow the camouflage pattern on the box art, in that I'm going to use the same color and I'm going to come at it from two different directions. So maybe call this an homage and it's not so much copying. But I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna use this. And what I do when I'm putting on camo like this, because I want it to be kind of rough. I don't want it to be, you know, Vincent van Gogh impressionist rough, but I want it to be rough as in field applied. Now the thing that I'm gonna be thinking is that it starts off as the tan color and the green is applied, because down the road when I start doing some dry brushing and some chipping and things like that, I'm going to chip the green to show the tan and you know, assume that it's a tan vehicle to start with, that you know, the tan was applied first and then the green over it, not either the other way around or not completely separate. It may sound like a you know, a detail that doesn't really matter, but I think in terms of the overall logic of how I do things afterward, I think it's important. I think it's important to settle that in your mind ahead of time. So that's the logic I'm going to be going for. Now I'm going to apply it similar to how I did before. I'm going to be a little more refined in my application. Now I'm going to use the fluffy brush again, and I'm just going to be outlining it first, the middle of where I want the basic pattern to be. This is not, of course, the full-on coat. This is just what I'm gonna kind of base everything off of. This is the baseline for everything else across the model. Now this is gonna go roughly here, so I'm gonna start the pattern here, then it's gonna go over to here. So if I were extending it out there, it's gonna go up to there and over here. Okay, now I've got that. And I apologize, I'm watching the model, I'm not watching the camera, and I don't have the autofocus on, or the fixed focus on, so if that was jumping around, I apologize. Now what I want to do is establish where I want the other lines in relation to this. So I'm going to start one about right here. I'm just getting some more paint on my brush. I'm going to start one about right here and bring it over like that. And then I'm going to turn it a little more a ways like that, and then stop it right there. And then I'm going to check and see what I want to put any on here. Yeah, I'm going to want to put some here, terminate it there, and then bring that over here. And I'll make a mark right over there. I'm not even going to look on the other side. I just know that's where I want to mark to show that's coming from. And then one of the important things to do is put your thumb right in the paint that you just put on there. That's very important to always do that. I swear sometimes I should have named the channel Idiot Modeling. You don't know how many, because I don't always bring them up, even with patron stuff. You don't know how many just dumb mistakes that I make. So, you know, if you've ever made dumb mistakes, you're in company with me. And if you don't make dumb mistakes, good for you, because I make them all the time. And I just question why would anybody want to listen to me in the first place? But that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to continue this stripe. I'll do it over there, and I'll just bring it down right there. And then what I want to do is look at this side. Now you notice I haven't done anything on the front yet. I'm going to look at this side, and I'm going to bring this one down over here, and this one will be over here. And I'm not too worried that the distance over here is a little different than the distance apart here. Again, I want this to be kind of field applied. I'm going to do some edge cleanup, but not a lot. Now, what I want to do here is I'll bring a stripe, and what I do when I dip it, I'm not showing it, but when I dip my brush in the paint off camera, I dip it in the paint a little bit, and then I dab it off just once or twice onto a piece of paper towel. The paint is thinned about 50-50 with water, so it's fairly thin. But this that I'm using is, I think I forgot to mention, I'm scatterbrained this morning, Castellan green. If you've built any Imperial Guard vehicles, you know the combo: Xandri dust and Castellan green. That's the Imperial Guard colors for the most part, at least for the Cadians, eh? But I'm going to bring this down over here like that, and then on down on the front like that. Now that's the basic pattern. I'm going to enlarge the stripes, I guess you would say, a little bit, but that sets the basic pattern. Now, if you want to, you can you could connect some this way, and I always have to be careful when I'm doing these diagonal stripes across it like that, because if you start connecting it this way too much, you start getting this grid pattern. So I'm not gonna do that. I also try to think in terms of features and things on the model. Like, I'm deliberately leaving this lighter here with the Xandri dust because I always like that gun that goes on the front right there, and I don't want it's going to be a darker color, so I don't want it to be kind of blurred into the green camo, if that makes sense. So I left that area Xandri dust, and that way it will kind of stand out and show up. So when you do this, think in terms of, well, what's going to be seen, and what do I want to feature on the model. Now let me get this worked in, and I like using these makeup brushes because they actually put paint down very nicely. If you thin it right, even if you get a few bubbles in it like I'm getting now, if you thin it right, probably need to put a little right here. If you thin it right, thinking out loud, then that goes down very smooth, and when it dries, the bubbles go away, and you get, I think you get less texture, and you certainly don't get visible brush strokes like you do with, if you were painting it with, a brush more like this. With this, you get I think a better application of paint, and I think so. So I mean, at least it sounds good when you're on camera. I'm also going to be painting this portion of the gun with this color, and the back portion of it, they show it as green, so I'm going to paint that, but I'll do that off camera because there's going to be no camo. It's just going to be doing the same thing. All right, let me give it a second coat. I know I've been rambling a whole lot, but let me give it a second coat and we'll keep going. All right, I've gotten that painted in, and what I did was I went over the original stripes that I did because they were a little patchy, and that was by intent. And then I extended the width of each stripe by about half again as much. And what I did was I started by starting here on my, I guess you call it my key stripe, and I extended it. When I extended it on the back side of it. So on all the other stripes, I extended them heading towards the back side of it so that they would remain roughly the same width and about the same consistency. So you can see that there. And it's a little patchy. That's by design. Like I said, I want it to be more of a field applied camo. And the step that I'm going to take now is going to allow me to neaten up those edges. Now, if you like the way this looks, if you're doing something like this and you like the way that looks, I think it's kind of cool. You know, if you want to have something like that, if you like the way that looks, leave it. Don't sweat it. But what I'm going to do in this one is I'm going to take this big brush here, and I'm going to do the application style very similar. I'm not gonna switch to normal brush strokes, but what I'm going to do is just neaten up those edges just a little bit, and you know, look for any areas that are like here. I want to bring that into some kind of logical line like that. And again, you'll see that it's going to be very patchy there on that edge. And I'll let that dry and I'll give it another coat. But this is just neatening it up just a little bit. Now, later steps, I'm going to do some dry brushing down the road, and that's going to kind of blend some of this in. Now, you can go back with the Zandri dust and do kind of a counter neatening, and I may end up doing that. I've seen some folks that do a really good job of mixing the Zandri dust and the Castellan green and kind of blurring the line between the two, so there's kind of a cool looking transition. There's a lot of ways of doing this. It's just, you know, as with anything else, it's whatever you think looks right. That's the main thing. So I've also seen a look, and I considered doing this, but I've ultimately decided not to, just because I thought it would be a little too many colors. But I've seen quite a few folks that do a camo just like this, and then the way they neaten up the edge is they just take a brush and they just paint black or a very dark gray along the transition between the two colors. If you've seen the camouflage that the U.S. Army for a while used back in the 70s, it was actually a 3-color camo, but then there were areas that were differentiated by having a black border between them. I didn't realize it until I did some research on it, that there was an actual approved pattern. It just wasn't a random thing. There was an approved pattern that people were supposed to follow. And having been a soldier and having had to do some field painting of 1 or 2 vehicles, I always wonder how much did it actually get followed. But anyway, let me get this neatened up. And I think I've rambled on for quite a while here, so let's see where I'm at time-wise and what we can get in next in this video. Now I'm running up on my self-imposed time limit. I just checked the time after I did some editing, and so I'm going to paint these tracks, and I think we'll call this an episode. Now, I mixed up some paint to paint these with, and I'm basically borrowing, homage, ripping off. If you've ever seen Martin Kovach's build of his Char Bis B1 or Char B1 Bis, it was like the second video series he did. He painted the tracks on that model a specific way that I liked. I thought I was going to do something kind of like that. If I do it well, I'll do it exactly like that, but I don't think I can pull it off like Martin does, because there's only one Martin, and he's amazing. Anyway, what I've mixed up is about 2 parts Vallejo buff, 1 part neutral gray, and that's roughly. I mean, it wasn't exact. I just kind of put it together until I got this kind of light, very desaturated, yellowish, steelish, just kind of dusty looking color. And then I wanted to add just some hint of reddish to it, to maybe make it seem dirty and possibly rusty. And I added in this mahogany brown until I got the mix that I wanted. So it's not precise ratios. That's just a rough starting point. But it was these 3 colors, and I've thinned it down with water, and I'm just going to get this big fat brush and just roughly paint this on there, because all I'm looking for is just a base for the tracks, a lighter base, because there's going to be lots of other stuff going over this. I'm going to do some stuff both while it's off the model and then put it on the model for all the final weathering. So let me get this painted on here. Well, I'm getting these finished up, and I think I'm going to go ahead and call this a video, because the next steps are going to take several minutes, and I don't want to go too far over my target of about 15 minutes. So I know there's not been a lot in this episode, but if you've watched my Patreon exclusive stuff, you know that I tend to ramble on a bit. But my purpose in doing that is not just because I just turn on the camera and can't stop talking. While that is true, I really want, especially for the Patreon videos, to just really kind of go through my whole thought process. Because one of the things that surprised me as a creator is the number of people who've told me, I want to know your thought process. I mean, it's important to know technique and things like that, certainly. But I'm cleaning off my brush while I'm rambling, if you're wondering. But people tell me, I want to know your thought process. That helps me sometimes more than just the technique. So that's why I ramble on, and I do hope you find it helpful. Anyway, thank you so much for being a patron, and I will see you in the next installment of this, and I'll just pick up right from where it is right now. And as always, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.